Hey, it's Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and it's Thursday, it's September 17th. This will be our chart lesson for today. This is going to wrap it up for the week. Remember, no chart lessons on Friday, so another week passed here. It's going by quickly. Uh, let's see, a crazy day today. A lot of volatility, mostly sideways here, but these are some pretty good trends, and there's some strong moves within these, but there's a lot of areas in here where you just don't really know what's going on, and you're probably better off to stay out of those. And you really had to be patient this morning because you didn't get a lot of trades. There's some periods here where you just had to sit and watch prices go. There's just not a good safe setup. So anytime you don't know what prices are doing, the best thing to do is just sit tight and do nothing. So early on when we started down here, of course, 7 o'clock comes during this little trend. You had to be thinking, hey, we may get another leg down like this. It doesn't happen. We bounce down here. Then you got to be thinking, hey, wherever we stop here, we may still get a leg down, but we may just go into a range day. And there's also the gap on the chart, the daily chart that's up here that we didn't feel. So there's still a gap on the daily chart. You would expect prices, they're still working higher, you can see, to try to fill that gap pretty quickly. It doesn't mean they will, but that's what you expect to happen. So there were a couple of different ways this day could go, and it ends up being a range day. So you got to draw this shorter term stuff to kind of keep you on the right side here, and that'll help a lot. Real quickly before we move on, I wanted to talk. I got a couple of questions about yesterday about two different things here, and I wanted to back up and talk about those real quick but evidently I must have had a brain freeze yesterday because I didn't talk about a couple of different things here that I normally would talk about, and I know a couple of people were confused, and so not surprising. One of them was this trade. I want to talk about this trade here. I had this trade marked and this trade marked, and this one actually fails, and I didn't even catch that this is a failure, so that's why I didn't talk about it. It's still a trade we like. It's still a trade I would take. So it's just going to be one that your timing is just not right. It happens sometimes. I went back to try to look to see what might have kept you out of this trade, and there's really not anything there. Usually when you find a trade that fails, there's some kind of reason. Let's just put the trend line back on here too. You usually can find some clear reason to say, okay, this is a reason to stay out of this trade, or if it failed and you didn't catch it in real time, you say this was a reason to stay out of this trade. And notice that you made the new high, you tried to go higher once, you tried to go higher twice, so there's a great double test there. There's a nice signal bar, and it only moves about 3 or 4 ticks here. So you don't scalp out of this one, and it turns up and it would stop you out. So if you took that trade and you got stopped out, there's just not much you can do about it. It happens sometimes. You could look at this and say, hey, this looks a little like congestion, and maybe stay out of that. If you put that there like so, that's a reason to maybe stay out, although your congestion really might be a little lower here. You tend to get the most closes right across there, which if you're looking at this at the far right hand side of your chart, that's what it looks like. So that would probably be the only thing, but because you're making these different swings and things, it doesn't really look that congestive, but definitely right here it's congestive, and you get a little failed break lower, and then you get then you just get the turn down off the triple test when you're looking for a reversal anyway, because it's real sideways and there's been resistance here. So the better entry was obviously here on the second entry, and then it works. But generally when you've got a triple test that far away from the EMA, I'm going to take that trade. It is an inside bar, but it's got matching highs. That's another thing you might say, hey, you might want to watch that one. But yeah, I had a brain freeze there. So it is a good trade, but the reason I didn't mention anything about it failing was because I just didn't catch it. I just saw the trade, marked it, and didn't catch it. So I want to make sure people understand I'm not marking my trades. I'm just marking the trades that set up using our strategy and our system. So these are not my trades, so make sure you understand that. And I may or may not have taken some of these trades, but I'm not marking my trade. So I just want to make that clear. And then the other brain freeze I had over here, somebody said I called this a failed second entry short, which I didn't go back and listen to the video, but sometimes I get to talking, and if I did say that, it was just another brain freeze. This is a failed second entry long. I think this was the trade. If this wasn't it looked just like this, but it was the first entry and then the second entry and it failed. And so it's a failed second entry long, if that was it. I'm pretty sure that was the spot. It wasn't a failed second entry short, and he was confused as to why I was calling it that. So if I said failed second entry short, it's a failed second entry that we go short. Now I'm guessing that's probably what I said, but if not, I had a second brain freeze there. So anyway, hope that helps for anybody that was curious what was going on there. But let's get over here and let's talk about our day. And I've already shown you. Let's back out one more time and show you the big picture. It's just so much here. It's so hard to get all this. And then when you narrow out, you can't see the context either. So, and the context is so important. But there's the big picture, and it's just sideways. But these are some fairly big trends, and they get really volatile as well. So just keep that in mind, that the big picture is sideways, so you're just going to have to go with the near-term stuff. There's just only way you can trade it. And you can see that's a clear trend down right there, clear trend channel. So 7 o'clock came just in here as you're reversing, just before you reversed and bounced to go up. And this was a pretty clear trend. You shouldn't have had any problem finding this. I marked this one. I made it green. It's a first entry technically by our rules on this chart. But there is a hidden second entry there, so it's a little hidden two legs. Notice there's a leg up, then a correction, and a leg up. By our count rules, that's not a second entry. But if you went to a slightly smaller chart, you would see a second entry there, and I call those hidden second entries. And you got to be real careful with those because they will fail on you. But you can clearly see this working down, and that's right, a big bearish bar right off that key entry point, right off the EMA, and the trend's still in play. So you may take that trade. There's another one right here. Same thing. We come back to the trend line. This one is a little congestive, so you could look at that as a failed breakout. I went back and forth about this one. The signal bar is not great, but technically, if you're looking, we come down. There's a first entry, and then you go lower, and then there's a second entry long right there. And so you could look at that as a failed second entry and argue to take that trade. It's definitely a failed break out of that little congestion area right there. I don't have it drawn, but hopefully you can see those four bars stacked up there. It might help if I made it. Drew it properly there. Well, somehow you can make this. Anyway, it's right there. I'm not going to spend a lot of time. I'm already 10 minutes into this, and we got a long way to go. So you could look at it as a failed breakout. It's with the trend. There's a failed second entry long. It's real subtle. But it's there. So and it's right at the key entry point is the main thing. I'm not crazy about the signal bar. If it had a real strong signal bar, I'd like it even better. But there it is. So then we come down here and we bounce, and you would expect. You might could argue here that there's a little bit of an overshoot here, but generally you're going to get a break on the other side pretty quickly afterwards. You can see that. So you're still kind of looking for a new low here. You don't get a good short setup and it reverses, but this is not a good reversal either. I talked to somebody else, or I posted this on the forum or something, but when you see these reversals like this, you want to see the second entry on this side. If we're reversing to the long side, you want to see it push through the EMA and pull back and test it. You don't want to see the entry to be below it. So I don't like, even though that one works, it's not a good trade. And of course, you would draw your first leg here, and you're looking for a second leg up right there. So the better trade was to wait on this higher low right here. and it actually, you can't hardly see it, but it breaks lower and turns and goes out the other side. Now you got to be careful on these uh, engulfing bars too. So a lot of times they'll trap people, and it looks like this one. Notice how it rockets on up real quickly. So we probably trapped some shorts right there. So, and you're looking for your measured move up here, and we actually go a little bit further, and then you get 2 legs of correction. There's 2 legs there, and there's actually 2 legs in that second leg. And of course, you got this little trend working up, and you get a break, so you expect prices to try to make a new high, but then you got this one down, you expect to make a new low. So it's really kind of hard to figure out what's going on in here. So if you were confused, and anytime it's not real clear, just be patient. You did get a high or low here, but not a very good signal bar. So you just kind of got to wait. This one actually broke higher and then turned down, so you're not really looking for a short there. It's really hard to know what you're looking for. That's the problem. So, and of course, it rockets on up here when it traps some shorts there probably. And then notice you make a new low there, and you're working up. You get a first entry, and then you get a second entry. So you may take that as a failure. Technically, there's not even a new low here. So it's really hard to argue for that. The reason I marked this one is because you got that congestion. It's a failed breakout, so it's probably going to come back, and this is right at close to the EMA, and that's a pretty strong move. So you'd expect prices to try to come back, at least test that breakout area, and of course that turns out to be a pretty good move. It's a little aggressive, but you may like that one. This would have been the better place to enter, but you just get a square doji there, and really what a doji is a 1-bar trading range. So if prices break out of it, guess what they probably do? They snap back again. And you can see that happen right here. It broke 1 tick higher, snap back. It ends up going higher, but it could have come down here and broke out the other side and then gone higher. It could have just went lower. So you don't know what prices are going to do there. You don't really have this. You got a trend line that you're looking at here possibly, and this is a little bit flatter than what I have it there. And it looks like prices are going to bounce off that trend line, but it's just not a very good signal bar, and you don't get a higher low till way up here, and again, you're in congestion. You can't enter up here. It's just not a great place to enter, so we just wait. And then it comes back, you get another second entry. Again, you got congestion, no setup, and then notice there's 2 legs down there. So now watch for a setup to get long again. And notice we came off the high, and we really don't have this confirmed yet, but everything's fitting. A lot of times if you don't have enough touches off your lows or your highs, watch these midlines, and you can see that midline in place. So that tells you, hey, there's a good chance I've got this right. And when this started rocketing down, this moved real fast, and then it kind of slowed down here, and I thought it was going to run right through it. But when I got this double bottom right here, that's a perfect setup, and you could have had this channel ahead of time, and it bounces right off of it. And if you're a little nervous about entering there, you get a higher low right here. Just go long right there, right off the EMA, and then you get your failure right here. So you get 3 chances to enter that trade. And that was the first really good setup we'd had that was clear kind of what was going on since way back over here. And even over here, this wasn't real clear. So this was a tough morning early on, because here's your 7 o'clock, and you've had 1 trade, and that one's close to being green. And you had 1 possible long here, and you don't have anything for certain until way over here, and then it gets clear right in here. So now it's pretty clear what's going on. We're in this uptrend, and the channel's pretty clear as well. So you could have taken any 3 of those, and you probably you would have got a runner on this one. That's the great thing about this. If you take this trade, you get a runner here. If you take this one, no, and if you take this one, you get a runner. So there was 3 chances, and 2 of them would have given you a runner. And we run on up, and we kind of go sideways. You get a failed break lower, no setup. Look at the bars, and then you get up here, and you start working sideways again. And you're in this little range, and you get this chance to go You get a little double test too. You made that low, you test it once, you test it twice. So you could go long right there. It's a little aggressive. It's off the EMA, which is a secondary key entry point. If the trend line is being way down here, that makes this less important here. And we're below the other midline, so there's some reasons to be a little bit concerned with that one, but it fits our criteria if you want to take an aggressive trade, and it might take on off to the upper side. So it's good for a scalp and plus some, and you would have got a little bit of a runner there. I don't know if you would have tried to trade a runner there. That's actually wider than you think it is. I think that's maybe 4 or 5 points wide there. And then we just start coming down here, selling off again. And the trend's still up though, and it's really hard to know what's going on here. You've got to assume we're coming back here, but you can't enter here with all that congestion. And look what happens. It breaks out and fails, and then you go down here. And again, it's just not clear. You would expect prices to try to go higher, but we're trending down here. And you would have drawn this trend line here. And when we come back to it, you might go short right here. Notice you got a little bit of, again, it's congestion right across here. And by this time, it's really down here. And you can see that congestion right there. So you might look at this as a failed breakout, but you can't get short till down here. It's already pushed through the low. So that gives you a little bit of confidence that, hey, maybe it's going lower. But I just, you just can't, you just never know. And so I think that one's just too risky. You could argue, hey, maybe it should be green, but it's a risky green one. And that's the way I'll leave it. So, and then we're trending down here now, and it looks like we've got a bigger channel in place. And really, I thought it was a real tight channel, but once you start going lower here, it turns out there's a much bigger channel. You wouldn't have known that till later, but it's there, and you would have just been trading this little channel right here. And you can clearly see that working down. And we drop down here. There's another turn off of it here. You actually would draw this off the low side and bring it up, and that turns down right at it. But that's an inside bar. It does have a matching high, so and your lows are just right there. And look how it bounces. It ends up going lower, but that may not always happen. So, and then we just start going sideways here. Now you might have traded this one because you do have room to scalp out, but boy, it's close. So again, I marked it as aggressive. And so again, we're kind of stuck in this where we do know kind of where prices are going, but we don't really get any setups. And we're just working lower here. Now you've had your break, close outside, and a new low. So every one of these is just really risky unless you get a real good trap, a real good setup, and you just don't get that. So there's another second entry short right here, but we've already had a break and easy several legs down here, and the signal bar is no good. So again, no setup. Here's one that's iffy right here. You may take this one. And I meant to mark this one at least green, but I didn't. So, and you could really argue for this one to be close to red, because there's a second entry short here, and it is right off the midline. You could also look at it as that resistance right across there. So that's one you might take, and there's a little room, but even back to the EMA. The real problem was, the reason I was real hesitant about it is because there's not a lot of room back to that EMA, and it could bounce right there. So this has been a rather large move down, and notice how we bounced off this low the second time. So there's a good chance this is where we're headed back to. This is where you would expect prices to go, back to here. And the problem is you don't know how they're going to get there. You just know they're going back there. You got to wait till you find something. It does look like we got a little channel working up too, so it just makes it a little iffy. And then we end up just kind of, I think you can see that people don't. That's what causes this indecision. This is just all indecision here. Nobody knows really what's going on. This is really tough trading. So just keep that in mind. But finally, you can see the resistance here, and you get enough tests, and you get this double top right here. So that's basically a lower high. And you could even argue that's a second entry. We don't really look for second entries when we're going sideways. But if you get a second entry at the key entry point that fits the range entry rules, then of course pay attention to it. But we're not necessarily looking for them, because they'll fail and flip-flop you. And where you got to be real careful is in the middle. And that's what's happening here. Prices are, I guarantee you, somebody's trading second entries and they fail, and then they take the failure and then it fails, and there's just no, it's all indecision, and it's hard to know what prices are doing. And you can tell that traders are not sure, because it's just, it starts just kind of chopping sideways. So anyway, we ended up working back over here, and here's a good little clue. When you see prices gap like that, they end up backing up and filling the little gap with one tick there. But when it closes on its high and then opens on its low and trades up first, that tells you a lot of times if your trend line's in the right place. Sometimes when you're having problems, or if you want confirmation your trend line, for whatever reason, don't ask me why, but prices will jump over these trend lines, and you'll see it jump over the EMA like that sometimes. So it's a nice little clue to help tell you that your trend line or midline or EMA or whatever is, it's in the right place. Really helps you with your trend lines to know they're in the right place, because the EMA, you don't have any control over where it sets up really. So, but you'll see it jump over it too. So we finally get a break of this bigger channel, and we're just kind of working sideways. There's no real short here until right here. You finally get a big breakout with plenty of room back, and so I like that one. And plus, you can see you got your trend line and it's turning down. You can see the midline working in there, so you can tell this little channel's in play. But the overall bias at this point, we're still looking for a retest of the lows. Turns out this channel ends up playing out before we go lower again. So anyway, we just drop down and we get back in this bigger range, and there's another second entry short right here. Notice that low, first entry, second entry, right off the original. We're just back in the range again. And that's such a tiny bar. It's not necessarily, it's more bearish than, it's really almost neutral, but there's only like 4 ticks or 3 ticks or something like that. Let me just look and see how many ticks. But with such a small bar on a volatile day, it's 4 ticks. You're not going to get many opportunities like that. So that's worth the risk. Knowing that we're looking for a new low, and knowing you had this little channel working down, and that's the first break of it. Prices are probably going to try to make a new low there, and they're still probably trying to make a new low for the bigger two-tiered channel. But this one wins out, and we go higher. And we're just bouncing again. I don't see any trades here I like. There's a higher low right here after this low that bounces off the midline, but we just came off the high side. So there's too big a chance it's time for us to head back here. So, and notice how we just chop along and all this indecision and stuff, and we end up going higher, but again, no setup. And you could consider going short up here. You're getting this little overlap, which is still basically congestion, although you don't have the doji or no body, so it's not as, I had this conversation on the forum today. This is still congestion because you got 4 more bars stacked up there. But the one you got to worry about is when at least one of them has no body like this, or a doji, or a very small body with maybe only a few ticks in it, like right in here. That's the serious congestion that you really have to worry about. Just a few bars like this, it's just basically what's happening here is prices have moved up and they're just running out of steam, and there's still some late week buyers coming in that don't know any better, and then it takes a few minutes for that momentum to wane, and then the bottom drops out of it. So that's what's going on here. So you might take this short right here. I didn't mark it because it's aggressive, and you could argue for it to be green again. The real problem, if it had been a smaller bar, or maybe you got a chance to go short at the very high of this, I might make it red, but the real reason is the bar is just so big. You're having to go short way down. That's a lot of risk to be taking a trade right there. You want to wait on. You need a smaller bar, better entry or something. So, and of course, it's unfortunate, but there's a great move down off of that. And there was the overshoot too, so that's something else to think about. When you get that overshoot, it's probably past time for a little correction here, and the bottom just straight. You don't get any other chance to enter this until right here, and then you get a first entry, second entry, and that's a nice second entry. Short, a great signal bar, almost a perfect signal bar, but it's right here at 2 o'clock, so it's a little late. I made it green, but you might could argue for that one to be red. There is, notice the little trend working up to the break, new high. It's just you'd be better off to wait on the lower high, and you don't get one. So, but you might take that trade because that's a strong move down, and you're going to at least probably try to retest that low. And you did have the overshoot, so you could just reverse. So that's one you want to think hard about. If this would have been earlier in the day, I'd probably make it green. But that late in the day, a little bit aggressive. So, and the reason people always ask me, and I guess people don't always hear it. I've said it a few times, but maybe I don't say it enough. But the only reason we don't like to trade after 2 o'clock is because if you get in here at 2:30 or whatever, and you get stuck in a trade that's going sideways, or if you suddenly have a loser, you don't have time to make it up. And somebody posted on the question, or I don't think it was a question. They just made a comment that they took a trade and it was like 5 minutes to 3 and it failed. And I'm like, don't ever enter. Some of your brokers will kick you out right before 3 o'clock. They won't wait till 3:15 or whatever time the market actually, whatever time they halt it now. But they'll kick you out right, a few minutes before 3 o'clock or whatever. And so you need to know what time your broker will kick you out. First of all, if you're still in a trade and not exiting. But the last thing you want to do is get up here and get kicked out and then watch it go exactly where you thought it was going to go, or just basically have a loser. And if you get kicked out before the trade finalizes, then you still got a loser and there wasn't anything you could do about it. So just be careful trading. You just don't have much time left. And so that's always been my rule, is stop trading at 2 o'clock. So we're almost 30 minutes. This is a long day. There's a lot of volatility here and a lot of craziness. A lot of uncertainty in the trading, and you can see it. And that's hard trading. So if you struggled with this stuff today, you see the stretches where there's just no trades and there's just not much you can do about it but sit and be patient and wait till it gets clear and you know what's going on. And even then, you may not get a setup. So anyway, I'm going to wrap it up. We're going to wrap up the week before this turns into a 30-minute video. But hope you had a good trading day. Hope you had a good week. We'll be back again to start another week next week on Monday. I'm done for today. This is Mac with PriceActionTradingSystem.com, and we'll see you next time.